Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, are the Pacers back on track after a much-needed win against the Hawks? And where does 500 home runs rank Albert Pujols among the all-time greats? And we'll tell you who wins tonight's NBA playoff games. All that and more coming up on the First Take podcast, which starts right now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. Kerry Champion sitting with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. Gentlemen.
Uh-oh, I think we better air shake today, right?
Yeah, he's doing fist pumps.
I'm telling you right now, I'm making an announcement right here on national television.
Okay.
I am done shaking hands. There will be fist pumps or whatever. The days of my shaking hands are over.
Because
it's the only time I get sick.
Oh.
I am tired of it. I've been sick 3 times this year, and all because I was in a public setting and I'm constantly shaking hands. There will be fist pumps, America, I'm telling you right now, from this day forward. Yep. I'm imitating Donald Trump and Howie Mandel. There will be fist pumps.
Except for one person.
You, my friend.
And I'm Mr. Clean over here because I use my hand sanitizer regularly.
So do I, but how many times can I wash my hands with hand sanitizer when I'm in public?
You can't.
Can't do it.
It's not possible.
I'm done.
Fist pumps.
I'm done.
Double check.
I'm done. It's over.
Coming up on the show today, Chicago Bulls are now down 2-0 against the Wizards. We ask, is it over for the Bulls? The gentleman obviously will weigh in. Plus, more news out of the nation's capital. Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder says the name of his team, not really an issue. Someone, however, disagrees. Ryan Clark joined that debate. We will talk about it. Also, we'll talk about the games that happened yesterday, the ones coming up. But right now, let's talk about something we asked yesterday. Can the Pacers return to old? Could they be the team we thought they were? It looked as if they could last night. They got the win over the Hawks. While the Hawks struggled to find their offense, Indiana played with chemistry. Team leader Paul George had 27 points, 10 boards, and 6 assists.
Yeah. We put our print on this game in the third quarter, which we've done, playing November, December, January basketball. We got back to that.
I think we just got mad. We were just getting mad. I was tired of getting hit. Lance was tired of it, and Paul was, tired of, people talking to him on the other team. I'm not going to name any names, but he got really aggressive after that. So one of those guys woke up a sleeping beast or whatever the saying is.
Sleeping beast or whatever the saying is. The question is, have the Pacers turned the corner? Skip Bayless, for you.
Stephen A. Smith, I'm not sold yet. I need to see one more game, this one a Game 3 back in Atlanta. I told you yesterday I could not pick the Pacers to win that game last night because I just hadn't seen enough evidence in the last 2 games in Indianapolis against these Atlanta Hawks. And I got to tell you, the first half last night looked like the previous 4 halves in Indiana against these Hawks. Hawks were moving the basketball with this free-flowing confidence, making shots. They got up 11 in the first half. That could have been 11 at halftime if Luis Scola hadn't come off the bench in the second quarter and gotten crazy hot and scored 11 of his own just to barely keep this team afloat. So it's a 4-point Hawks lead at halftime. And the Pacers came out of the locker room and won the third quarter 31-13 with some of that November, December, January kind of next level basketball. And I saw it at both ends. They made 12 of 16 shots in the third quarter. Atlanta went 5 for 20, including 1 for 8 from 3. Now, the Pacers definitely took it up a level, and Paul Pierce definitely changed the game by taking Jeff Teague, keeping him out of the game, and basically
Paul George.
I'm sorry, Paul. What did I say?
Paul Pierce.
Paul George, right. By keeping Jeff Teague out of the lane and basically out of the game the last 3 quarters of the game. And I thought Jeff Teague made kind of a rookie mistake because he really started trash talking Paul George. Not a good idea, especially in that arena, which can be combustible, and finally got loud again. But you know what it was like to me? I saw Atlanta miss a whole bunch of wide-open shots in the third quarter. I saw the Atlanta Hawks sort of tiptoe up to the edge of the big boy pool last night in the third quarter and look down into it and think, uh-oh, we could win this game and we could be the favorites in this series, and chicken out and back off and say, you know what? Maybe we are the sub-500 Atlanta Hawks. Maybe we should just go on home and see if we could bounce back in Game 3. I thought they could have won that game last night. I thought they were in position to win it, and they just missed too many shots. So I'm still going to say I'm going to wait and see for a game 3.
I definitely have a wait-and-see approach. I found myself incredibly happy for Frank Vogel because obviously as the losses accumulated, he was looking more and more to be on the hot seat, and that's a man that I hope is coaching in this league for years to come, to be quite honest with you. When I look at this team, you know how fond I am of this team. You know how much I raved about them throughout the regular season. They've been a shell of themselves, particularly since the All-Star break, since the acquisition of both Andrew Bynum and Evan Turner in terms of chemistry and you know, how guys gel with one another. I don't think we can ignore that either. But I also think that when I look at last night, it was nice to see Paul George step up and play like the star that we all know him to be. But at the same time, I'm not sold on the Pacers yet in this series because they got to show me something in Atlanta. And here's why. Atlanta missed a whole bunch of wide open shots. They had a whole bunch of shots. They were wide open. They were uncontested, and they just weren't falling. If those shots are falling, we got an entirely different game. We've got an entirely different level of pressure on the Indiana Pacers. You're not running away with the game in the third quarter and then cruise control in the fourth quarter and basically doing what you're doing. So I'm not sold in it. Not only that, let's keep in mind, I want to make sure I'm clear about this. Nobody is sitting there and looking at a guy like Roy Hibbert and saying you don't deserve to play, period. You know, nobody, you know, I think people, you know, ran away with my comments about how he should be benched. But I'm talking about this series. I'm talking about specifically as it pertains to matchups because, Skip, by and large, when Indiana went on that run, Roy Hibbert was on the bench.
He was.
All right? He was on the bench. He wasn't doing much for you offensively, just 1 for 7 in this game.
1 for 7.
Defensively, somehow, some way, they've been able to circumvent him, probably because this guy, he is spelled Antic, but Atish, whatever the name is. Antish, right? This guy, I like him.
So do I.
He's physical, he's big, but he can pull you away from the basket by hitting perimeter shots.
Didn't do it last night.
He didn't do it last night, but he can do it. And Millsap also is capable of doing it. So, to me, the jury is still out because Roy Hibbert still played 24 minutes. David West still played 23 minutes. They combined for 18 points on what was it? 5 of 12 shooting. I think that, you know what? You may have to go small to beat Atlanta. And Atlanta missed open shots. That means they had open shots.
I agree.
You can't give them no shots in Atlanta.
Okay, last 2 quick points. I've been very hard on George Hill, the ex-Spur.
He showed up.
As the missing link.
He showed up last night.
The weak link. Yeah, he showed up in the third quarter. He had 10 points in that blitz. So, way to go, George Hill. Still have my doubts. But now, to you, did Teague make a young mistake by trying to trash talk? He was just openly abusing verbally Paul George.
That remains to be seen. I mean, the fact is that I didn't like the way Paul George reacted when, you know, they ultimately went on their little run and he hit a 3 and he was screaming. And I'm like, it's the Atlanta Hawks, bro. It's the first round. It's the Atlanta Hawks. Come on now.
He was flexing to the crowd, but he went to the Atlanta bench to do it. Like over the bench, like he's got them.
You got to remember, they've only won in Atlanta twice since 2006, if I remember correctly. So let's see what they do. But in the end, what it comes down to is, you know, Paul George has the game that back it up. He just has to continuously show it. But I still say the key to this series is going to be Vogel willing to just I don't want to say eat crow or anything, but you can't be fixated on your system that you're not willing to make the necessary adjustments. And you're going to have to make adjustments, and if it means going small, you're going to have to do that.
Good perspective, gentlemen. Game 3, Pacers at Hawks, Thursday, 7 Eastern. Staying in the East, Toronto was able to tie the series. The Raptors, led by DeMar DeRozan, had an all-star performance. You may remember Game 1. He basically disappeared, but he looked really good last night. The veteran Nets made it competitive. Paul Pierce bought the Nets within 2 points, got him in within 2 points with less than a minute, but he missed a very important 3. He talked about it after the game.
I thought, you know, guys just kind of stuck to their man individually for the most part, didn't help one another. You know, and that's the big part of our defense, you know, sinking, shrinking the floor, locking down the paint. Tonight, too many touches for them in the paint, too many paint points, and we didn't rebound. So, you know, we gave them everything they wanted, 40, 50 points in the paint and 20 offensive rebounds. We were a soft team tonight in the paint.
All right, we're a soft team. Skip, you have a problem with him saying this?
Stephen A. Smith, as you know, I love Paul Pierce. He is often the truth. I did not love what he said after the game. Yeah, I did have a problem. I think Nets fans should have a problem. I think his teammates should have a problem. I think ultimately this morning Paul Pierce should look back and have a problem with what he said moments after, while he was still ticked off from going 2 for 11 in this game and missed 2 big threes in the last 24 seconds, either of which could have really changed the end of this game. Last night, the truth was false. We saw what happened on Saturday. The truth scored 9 straight points in the final 3 minutes, and he went screaming to his bench, "That's why they brought me here." Last night was not why they brought him there, both in the game and after the game. And I do realize that they got out-rebounded 52-30, so they just got crushed on the boards. They gave up 19 offensive rebounds to a young, pretty talented young bunch from Toronto. Pretty headstrong. Maybe you've helped recreate a monster with those kids. But, again, will this help re-motivate the Nets? I don't know about that. Will it irritate some of his teammates and have them thinking today, well, Paul, if you had just made one of those 2 threes, we might be having a different conversation this morning. So that's where I stand. I think he was just caught up in the raw emotion of the post-game moment.
I completely 1,000% disagree with you, Skip Bayless. I don't think you could be more wrong in your analysis of in your breakdown of Paul Pierce. I don't care that he went 2 for 11 last night. I don't care that he missed 2 key threes. I don't care that he went 0 for 6 from three-point range. It was a bad shooting game. Paul Pierce, the truth, a champion, a future Hall of Famer, is beyond being measured by just one game. He showed up in game 1. He didn't show up in game 2 offensively. He may show up in game 3 in Brooklyn, might not show up in game 4. He could show up in game 5. It could be sporadic. But ultimately, the bottom line is simple. When crunch time arrives and it's time to put the ball in somebody's hands, you want Paul Pierce to be one of those individuals touching that basketball. You know why? Because he's earned it. And he hasn't just earned it because of his big shot-making ability. He's made it because of his big play ability and because of the accountability that he holds himself to and that of his teammates. Let's count the ways. You're the Brooklyn Nets. You come into this series, rebounding is an impediment. You know it's an obligation to sit there and crash the boards because that's a strength of the Toronto Raptors. You know it's going to be even more pivotal because you beat them on their home turf in game 1. What do? You get crushed, obliterated on the boards, 52-30. That is inexcusable. And if there's ever the appropriate time to use the word soft, it is when somebody dominates you on the boards to that level. Because if the Nets had grabbed more rebounds, if they had made the advantage not as wide as the ocean and made it far more competitive than that, they may have very well won this game. And so, yeah, he could have hit those shots. But again, when I think about guys missing shots, Skip, I go back to one of the greatest commercials I have ever seen. And you love it, and you know what I'm talking about. Michael Jordan is driving to the United Center, and all you hear is his voiceover, and he's counting all of the failures in his life. And then when he gets out the car and he's walking inside the United Center, it goes black, and it says, "That is why I succeed." You can't. I don't care who you are. You're going to come up short at some point. It's not whether you come up short or not in life or on a basketball court. It's how you respond to that level of adversity. Paul Pierce has absolutely nothing to prove. He was brought here to hold dudes accountable, not just to hit shots, but in conjunction with KG to hold dudes accountable. And that is exactly what he did last night. You don't sit back and be quiet and just talk about, oh, game 2, that's a wash. We come back for game 3. You point out what you didn't do, so you make sure you put the younger dudes on notice. You better not let this happen again. And I have no problem with that. That's what leaders, that's what champions are obligated to do. Paul Pierce fulfilled his obligation. And you know that's a lot coming from me, because it ain't like I'm one of his biggest cheerleaders. But boy, can he
He's not one of yours.
That's right. And we're fine. We're totally
cool
fine with that. Both of us are cool. We don't ever have to talk again. But I'm telling you, That doesn't mean I'm going to take away from his greatness and the respect that I have for him as a champion and as a leader.
Okay.
He deserves all the credit in the world. That's what I want to see my champions
Now,
do.
I have several problems with everything you just
Sure.
said. Number one, I cringe when you put Paul Pierce in the same story with Michael Jordan, but that's okay.
No, I use Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the barometer to measure how people should conduct themselves.
But when Michael did miss the last shot, as he did in the Game 5 at the United Center against Karl Malone and company, and then he righted the wrong, as you remember, in Game 6 in Utah, he wasn't calling out his teammates because he was calling himself out. I shouldn't have missed that shot. Okay, so it wasn't like we played soft tonight, like trying to take the focus off himself. Now, let's get to what this team is right now.
I'll address that in a second,
Okay,
but go ahead.
What often happens to the two-time champion Miami Heat? Do they ever get out-rebounded 52-30? Oh, it happens all the time. And they manage to win the basketball
Not by
game.
that much, Skip.
They get crushed sometimes.
They're not by 22 rebounds.
Sometimes they do. I bet they have been. I bet they've lost rebounds.
I'd like to see
22.
how many games the Miami Heat won
All right, we'll check
when
that.
getting out-rebounded by 22.
But their plus-minus on rebounds was awful. I think it was the worst. I think they were the worst in the NBA.
I understand
so
that.
on a routine nightly basis, they're going to lose the backboards and oftentimes win the basketball game. So you're calling out a team that does not have Brook Lopez, am I right?
Right.
So you don't have your big guy in the middle. You got the kid Plumlee, right?
You got Blatch, you got Plumlee, you got KG.
Okay, but KG is really on the downside.
I understand,
right?
but not that's when it comes to scoring, not his ability to rebound the basketball from time to time.
Well, I just can't hold their feet to the fire on the backboards because the truth was they were in the Miami Heat position to win the basketball game. The truth had to be the truth. He just needed to make one of those threes, and we're having a whole different. We're saying, oh, the Raptors are done now. Instead, DeMar DeRozan, we're not even talking about that. He scores 17 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Whose fault was that? Was that some Paul Pierce's fault? It might have been. I don't know. Why didn't Paul play harder defense? You know, was he not the defensive leader of that team? I don't know. You better be careful when you're calling your team soft.
Well, listen, you brought up how you hate when I bring up Michael Jordan comparisons. There are no Michael Jordan comparisons. He's the standard. And it's not just about his game, it's about a mentality. So what I'm pointing out is that I'm using those analogies to highlight the kind of thinking winners usually have. Just like Kobe and his commercials, same principle. I'm looking at a guy like Paul Pierce, and I'm saying you got young dudes that you need more from, and you're telling them. You have to remember something. Paul Pierce and KG didn't come to Brooklyn to be the primary options that we all salivate and want them to be. They are supplementary and complementary parts to something that was supposed to be a big three in the form of Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez goes down. Joe Johnson is usually in cruise control until it's time to close. And Darren Williams is the guy that's the spark plug to set things up for Joe Johnson. That's the way it works, and everybody else fits in. Paul Pierce is supposed to be fitting in, but he has been somebody they've had to lean on because other dudes haven't stepped up and have done what they're supposed to do. We love Darren Williams in terms of his game and what he's capable of bringing to the table, but the $98 million man has not played like a $98 million man. Now, to his credit, a lot of it had to do with his ailing ankle or his debilitating ankle injuries that he's had to fight through over the last couple of years. In the second half of last season and this season, he's come on strong and deserves credit for that. But when you give a dude $98 million, there is no doubt that you're expecting more from him than he has given you. But in the case of Paul Pierce, this is a dude, what is it, 16th year in the league? This guy has done it. He has proven it. And what he's doing now is he's holding dudes accountable.
Okay, what did he yell on Saturday after he made the last big shot?
Right,
that's why they brought me here.
That's right.
Well, last night was also why they brought me here.
But you're going to come up short in some moments, and that's understandable. But anybody could come up short with a shot. It didn't go in. You understand? Sometimes that happens. But when you talk about rebounding, when you talk about defense, yielding 47.4% shooting from the field, yielding a 30 points to DeMar DeRozan, even though 14 of them came from the free throw line. What I'm saying is when stuff like that happens and you're allowed to attach certain statistics to effort and heart, that's different. Now, shot-making ability, that's skill. Sometimes it's there for you, sometimes it's not. But you are not supposed to get beat by 22 on the boards. You are not supposed to surrender nearly 48% shooting from the field collectively in a playoff game. Those are the kind of things that you have to call out, because if you don't, Skip, you embolden a team. They get even more confident, and then they truly do punk you, which is why the word soft is appropriate, because you want to make sure cats know in the effort category, we will be there. You will not break us.
I would usually be with you if the Nets had lost this game by 25.
Okay.
See, then you call them out and you say, we were all awful. And I get that. You're the lead. You are a team leader, if not the team leader.
Right.
But not when you have a chance to win the basketball game. You better be careful with that one.
I think you should be careful, but I think it was the right thing for him to do at the right time.
All right, Game 3, Raptors at Nets, Friday, 7 Eastern. We'll preview that tomorrow.
Being a 2-0 hole, I mean, what's the mentality right now?
Just win the next game. Win the next game. You know, you take them one at a time. You know, get a look at the film, try to make some corrections, be ready for the next one.
The Bulls looked as if they wanted to make a run and even the series, but the Wizards came from behind in the fourth to take a 2-0 lead in the first round series. Defensive Player of the Year, Joakim Noah, shut down Nene, but when the game went into overtime, Nene took over and the Bulls couldn't find the basket. Again, down 0-2. Stephen A. Smith, are they done?
Skip Bayless. This is tough because I have so much respect for the Bulls as an organization, and especially their players and their roster. But I owe everybody an apology, especially in the nation's capital. That's Ernie Grunfeld. That's his right-hand man, Tommy Shepard. That's Coach Randy Whitman. That's definitely John Wall and Bradley Beal and these old. Not only have I changed my position on the Washington Wizards winning this series, I believe they will. They might sweep the Chicago Bulls. It's simply that much of a mismatch. I'm watching this game last night. I'm watching game 1, and I'm like, oh, my Lord, we got caught up. We fell for the okie doke. You know what it is? Joakim Noah, Defensive Player of the Year, well-deserved. The Energizer Bunnies that they are, the blue-collar workers that they are, the exceptional coaching of Tom Thibodeau or Thibodeau, whatever. I mean, he says Thibodeau. I'm going to roll with that, even though everybody says Tibbs. Okay? I'm looking at Paxson and Gar Forman, and I'm saying, not only do you have to get Derrick Rose back, man, you've got to get these brothers some help on the offensive end of the floor. The Chicago Bulls have nobody to call on to make a shot. I mean, by the end of last night's game, Kirk Heinrich was exhausted, had no legs. All of his shots were short. They didn't have a snowball's chance, and you know what, of going in. DJ Augustine had a big game, but he was maintained when it counted most. Washington goes on this run with Wall. He's too fast, too quick. With Beal, he's too skilled. He's too much of a sharpshooter. With Gortat and Nene, they're simply too big, too formidable for Joakim Noah to handle by himself, or even with the help of Taj Gibson, not to mention the fact that they can pull you away from the floor. With Trevor Ariza, he's capable of hitting three-point shots. I ain't even bringing Andre Miller and the experience that he gives you off the bench at the point guard position of Martell Webster. These guys have been someplace before. They have experience. They have skill. They can shoot perimeter shots. They're young, they're athletic, and they're fast. The Chicago Bulls are simply an inferior team. And we got caught up because of their energy, their heart, which is unquestionable, the exceptional coaching of Tibbs. We got caught up, man. This team is not good enough to beat the Washington Wizards in a best-of-7 series. They simply don't have the horses on the offensive end of the floor, and because they're so limited offensively, they can't make any mistakes, and that forces them to expend even more energy night in and night out. They're only human. Losing Luau Deng, losing Derrick Rose.
I mean, he got traded.
You move Luau. If Luau Deng was there, if Derrick Rose is there, there's nothing to discuss here. But without those two guys, you simply can't score enough. Even though they did score enough last night, you can't score when it counts to beat these Wizards, man. The Wizards have this series.
So are you calling a sweep now?
You know what? Chicago has too much heart for me to insult them like that. I got so much respect for them. The only thing that I'm willing to say is that a sweep seems likely, but I don't think there's any way in hell they win this series now. And not only that, I'm watching these Wizards, and unless Indiana shows me something different, the Miami Heat are going to meet the Washington Wizards in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Okay. I'm with you. It's not likely the Bulls can rally in this series. But I'm not going to call it a sweep because I have way too much respect for the character and the guts of this basketball team. And I remind you, it wasn't like these first two games at the United Center were blowouts, right?
No.
I mean, last night did go to overtime, right?
No. Yeah.
Okay. So, and by the way, one weird stat of the night, I just got to throw this out. Jimmy Butler for the Bulls played all 53 minutes last night. And it's to your point, there's not much bench going on here. It's basically 7 guys, and it's really about 5 guys. But DJ Augustine does come off the bench, and he gave them big pop last night because, remember, they were 17 down in the first half, and then all of a sudden they roar back and they're 10 up in the fourth quarter. And they couldn't close the deal, to me, because you mentioned Trevor Ariza shooting threes. They switched him. And by the way, the Wizards, underrated defensive team. I know all the hype is centered around the Bulls. That's why I asked John Wall when we had him on the show. I said, are we overhyping the Bulls' defense? And I was hoping he'd take the bait and say, hey, we play a little defense too. He did not take that bait.
He did not.
But they are showing that they play a little defense too. So they switched Trevor Ariza onto DJ Augustine. How tall is DJ? What is he, 6'1" or 2" maybe?
Well, Skip, I can assure you he is no taller than 5'10".
Okay, whatever. Okay, I know what they list him.
And it might be 5'9".
So remember, with 8 minutes left in the game, he's got 25 points. He's made 10 out of 17 shots. And all of a sudden, Trevor Ariza takes him out of the game. He does not score another point. He goes 0 for 4 the rest of the way. Well, guess what's going to happen? The Wizards are going to go on a 14-4 run because the Bulls got no scorers left. If there's no DJ, and Heinrich, God bless him, he plays his heart out, but he's just not talented enough and not young enough anymore to be the go-to guy. And by the way, Heinrich had a little layup, and he just couldn't get it to get up over the rim late in overtime.
All you need to know is Heinrich was their go-to guy.
Well, he was. Well, Heinrich has been. He was down the stretch.
Was their go-to guy, and that's all you need to know how challenged they are. And the Bulls better be careful, because you see, when you look at DJ playing 40 minutes, when you look at Jimmy Butler playing 53 minutes,
that's the whole game. You realize
exactly.
That's every minute of overtime.
What I'm saying to you is, when you see stuff like that, it gives guys like the Mellows of the world cause to pause, because you don't want to be drained.
Right.
I was thinking about that.
You don't want to be drained, and you don't want to be milked to that level.
Yeah.
So Paxson and Gar Forman need to be careful, because it's about Derrick Rose coming back. It's about making sure you get help for him on the offensive end of the floor, because that's what his brother Reggie was concerned about. Yep. The entire load being put on his brother's shoulders, because that contributes to injuries in a lot of people's minds. And that way, on the defensive side of the ball, you can do what you do. That's what Chicago has to be careful of. Is we're watching them right now. How attractive of a commodity are you? We know Tibbs can coach his butt off, but it hasn't been perceived as them being on the same page.
Yep.
Then you combine that they play staunch defense, but no offense.
Yep.
And anybody that they bring are going to have to carry that load. It may be too much, so they need to be careful. But the Wizards are fully loaded. They're young. They're athletic. They can shoot. They can go inside. They can pound. They can rebound. Ernie Grunfeld's done a hell of a job of resurrecting that team, considering how Gilbert Arenas hijacked that franchise with his stupidity.
Yep. Okay, so can we conclude that Wizards up 2-0 could actually encourage Carmelo to stay in New York?
You know what? I don't think you can conclude it, but I do think it's worth giving some thought to.
I like it.
I mean, if you're Melo, L.A., Kobe's done in 2 years.
Yep.
Chicago, you could be run ragged there, too, although you can legitimately immediately compete for a title. But you got to wonder how many years those guys have left on their body, considering the work that they got to put up there.
Well, how many does Derek have left on his body?
Well, he's actually been out the last 2 years, so he should have plenty.
Okay, but knee-wise,
we don't know. We don't know. So.
All right, so Stephen A., let me get this right. Wizards win this series. That may help Knicks keep Carmelo. Could be.
Well, it's not about them winning the series. It's about witnessing the amount of mileage that's put on the body of the Chicago Bulls players. And that's not to say I know it for sure. Somebody like Sam Smith would be far more qualified than myself to speak to that intimately, because we don't know what Tibbs is doing to them in practice. I'd like to believe that he's smart enough to give them a break. He is an exceptional coach. It's just that when you see guys playing these amount of minutes, how attractive is it going to be for
Carmelo? Yeah. All right, something to think about and consider. Albert Pujols hit .499 and .500 in last night's win over the Nationals. Pujols is the 26th player in Major League Baseball history to reach that historic mark. Pujols certainly with Hall of Fame numbers across the board, but we asked this question: does he belong on the Mount Rushmore of all-time sluggers? Skip Bayless, consider this, and please answer.
My answer, Carrie, Stephen A., is a big no, and I don't think he ever will. I don't think he'll ever even be in the conversation, even though you can make a strong case, Stephen A., bless you,
Thank you,
that no right-handed hitter has ever had a better first 10 years of his career. Even though you can make a case that statistically right now, if you throw in on base and slugging, that he's upper echelon. He's elite of the elite. Now, if we're talking about Mount Rushmore, we're back to 4.
Okay.
So my Mount Rushmore right now is Barry Bonds. This is just hitting, overall hitting, not
That's
just
it.
not. This is swinging the bat only, no defense, no pitching. Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Willie Mays. I have Stan Musial a close 5th to Willie, but I'm going with Willie. If nothing else, just on pure aura, charisma, star power. But I can also back it up with the stats: 660 all-time home runs. Now, the problem with Albert Pujols to me is that over the last 4 years of his career, he looks like a declining player. He's been hurt. He had we keep talking every day about plantar fasciitis, right? So we're going to talk about it again later with Al Jefferson. But he had it last year, restricted him to 99 games. So, Stephen A., when I look at batting average, plunging, by his standards, he's still a career 321, but the last 4 years have gone 299, 285, 258, 274. He's off to a nice start this year. He had 8 home runs in the first 20 games. Pretty good. Leading...
all in the last 13.
Yeah, it's very good. And leading the American League right now in slugging. So he's off to a nice start. Got a long ways to go. Can he stay healthy at age 34? Now, we have to mention the steroid cloud under which he hit a lot of his home runs. And that whole era, as we talk about, was tainted. And again, Albert has vehemently denied any PED use. And when Jack Clark accused him, you recall, he sued Jack Clark, and Jack Clark apologized, and the suit got dropped. So no evidence. Except that he just had the misfortune of playing through the steroid era and hitting a number of these 500 home runs during that era. So, big picture, as a declining player, I don't see him, maybe he gets to 600. I don't see 700. I see that he's had one injury after another. I see him continuing to decline under the weight of, as you know, a 10-year, $254 million contract that he signed with the Angels to leave the best baseball town in America, St. Louis, where he played for 11 years.
As far as your Mount Rushmore, I agree with you. Now, refresh my memory. You said Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, and who?
Ted Williams.
And Ted Williams. Skip Bayless, I would replace Babe Ruth with Hank Aaron. That is me. Okay? And the reason why I would replace Babe Ruth with Hank Aaron is, number one, the level of competition Babe Ruth actually went against, and number two, what Hank Aaron had to endure en route to becoming the all-time home run king.
But we're not doing that. We're not doing. Okay.
I'm talking about my Mount Rushmore.
All right.
I'm saying that I'm taking into account. And I'm not trying to do it like, oh my goodness, just the adversity that Hank Aaron went through. I'm trying to sit there and say there was a time when obviously baseball wasn't integrated, and that's when Babe Ruth accumulated some of his numbers.
Okay.
I'm saying if you didn't play against everybody, now I understand the same could be said about Ted Williams, but
you could.
I get all of that. But
in fact, if I were you, I would have taken Ted Williams off.
Fine.
Okay.
One of them.
All right.
Go, okay, that's fine. Because all I have is obviously some black and white video of Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. So I get where you're coming from. One of them come off for Hank Aaron. That's all I'm saying. You pick one. But one of them coming off from Hank Aaron. I got no problem with the other three there. So Albert Pujols would not, excuse me, he would not belong on the Mount Rushmore of baseball. No doubt. But you know something, Skip Bayless? The greatness that this man exhibited, you say the first 10 years of his career. I say the first 11. Remember, that 299 season, he was injured for a few games. He wasn't himself. And that was the year he finished, 37 home runs, 99 RBIs, a 299 batting average.
Not bad.
But, I'm just saying, because he was not, that's when there was some debilitating. So to me, it's the first 11.
All right.
So really, and then you take into account the next two. Now, there he was a shell of himself his first 2 years in Anaheim, mostly due to injury, as they say. So now that he's getting healthy, I think the jury is still out as to the level of greatness you can attach to his name, because if he starts balling the way he's been balling over these last 13 games, and he looks...
baseball players ball?
Yes.
Yes.
They
can, just like NBA.
There's a ball there.
There's a ball in the baseball. So I'm just saying to you, Skip Bayless, if you look at it, his last 2 years, he was struggling. But if he comes back to doing what he's accustomed to doing, and we're able to definitively attribute a decline to the 2 years that he was struggling health-wise, then I think that gets eradicated, and all of a sudden you take into account the totality of his greatness, and it simply cannot be ignored. It wasn't just that he was smacking home runs. He was a perennial 300-plus hitter along the way. His slugging percentage, everything, it was just special. And so when I look at this man, I'm saying to myself, okay, what's left? What's left is the steroid era. And that is where empathy and sympathy comes into my heart for Albert Pujols. Okay? I had the opportunity and the pleasure to meet him one time, and it was a great, great experience for me, because I think he's a wonderful player, and by virtue of a first-hand account, he seems to be an incredibly wonderful person. I got to tell you, it's grotesquely unfair that this man's name has been associated with this steroid. No evidence whatsoever, no failed test, no anything.
Well, listen, it's not grotesquely unfair when he plays in the steroid era, because everybody.
Well, let me tell you why it's unfair.
It's not his fault. It's his
I'm going to tell you why it's
wrong
unfair.
place, wrong time.
We got Balco. We've got the guy Nowitzki for IRS, whatever he was with, right?
Yeah.
We've got the Mitchell report.
Yeah.
We've got Clemens, we've got Bonds, we've got McGuire, we've got Sosa. You've got everybody. Palmeiro. You've got so many people. None of them was Albert Pujols. Never gave testimony, never had to. Never was subpoenaed, never needed to be. Never. I mean, all we heard was Jack Clark open his big mouth.
He did.
And then he ultimately had to retract because he didn't want his butt to get sued.
Yep.
Okay? And apologize and all of this other stuff. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, we live in America, the land of second chances, opportunities. This man don't even require a second chance. The benefit of the doubt, innocence until proven guilty, applies here. I know it usually applies in a court of law, but in rare cases, it should apply in a court of public opinion. And this is one of those cases, man. This dude right here deserves our respect. Might not need to be on the Mount Rushmore. But
you know what's interesting about this? You have met Albert, I have not.
Right.
So I watch him closely only from a distance. Constantly I read quotes, reactions from Albert Pujols, and he seems like almost a daily sourpuss to me. He's always upset about something. He's always thin-skinned. I'm not getting enough credit. Maybe it's to your point. Maybe it's part of why should I ever be accused.
The reason why, Skip, that it would be one if there were no steroid era. He's a big baby. But because it's a steroid era, it's not crying sour milk. It's simply saying this era tainted me. I don't deserve this because I'm innocent of all of that.
Yeah. Okay.
And that to me, if you take that into account, I got to tell you, I don't mind it. I don't mind him standing up and complaining because he's bringing attention to himself with those complaints, which makes me side with him because he wants you to understand. I don't care what you're seeing out there. That ain't me. What I'm doing is legit, and I respect that.
Okay, so now he's playing virtually in the shadow of the next Mickey Mantle and Mike Trout with the Angels. And it could be a good thing that he's in the shadow because this is going to give him a chance to quietly get back to the level that you think he can get back to, right? Because if you're 10 years, $254 million, wouldn't there even be more pressure on Albert if there were no Mike Trout, right? What if he were just the man with the Angels, right? Okay.
Mike Trout says of Pujols that he is 100% healthy. That's the guy he's used to seeing. Redskins owner Dan Snyder is back at it, and being back at it is defending the team's name and essentially saying the name really isn't an issue. Let's listen.
I wrote a letter to the fans. I think it speaks for itself, and I think it tells you that we did our homework, unlike a lot of people. We understand the issues out there, and we're not an issue. The real issues are real life issues, real life needs, and I think it's time that people focus on the reality.
Pro golfer Nota Begay, who runs the Foundation for American Indians, says Snyder's newly formed Foundation for American Indians isn't really legit. Let's look at this quote. More of a gimmick to try to offset some of the public disdain for the name of his football team. The Washington football team's front office has tried to make the issue about them, and it's really not about them. It's about, unfortunately, the NFL and its owners and its corporate partners condoning use of that word being Redskins. Joining us now is analyst and Redskin free safety Ryan Clark. You've heard both sides. I know you know this issue. You play for the Redskins. Whose side are you on?
You know, in this one, for me, it's tough to take a side, and it's also tough to not understand where both sides are coming from. Listen, Nota Begay makes a great point, you know, saying that, hey, maybe they're doing this to kind of get some of the disdain or the public perception to sway in their favor. I can understand why he may feel that way. His foundation, the MB3 Foundation, just received awards for some of the work that he's been doing for Native Americans, fighting obesity. And so I understand he feels like he's doing it out of labor of love, and now that all of a sudden Daniel Snyder's getting the heat because of the Redskins name, he wants to go out and do that. And also what we can't do, none of us knows the way that word makes them feel, how it affects them when it's used. I'm not Native American. I can't say to them, hey, this is not a slur. I can't say to you, hey, this is not meant in a derogatory manner to you, because I don't know what it means to you. And I think Daniel Snyder, Mr. Snyder, can't do that as well. The thing I do believe is that he is doing it for the right reasons. I know he doesn't want to change the name of the Redskins. In 1932, it started out as the Boston Braves. The next year, they changed their names to the Redskins. So since 1933, this football team has been known as the Redskins. Daniel Snyder fell in love with the Redskins. He was a fan of the Redskins. It's the team he knows. It's what they associate Washington football with. So he doesn't want to change the name. I feel like what he's saying is, you know what? But I do know there are real life issues out there. I do know there are ways that I can help.
Okay.
And the thing I think about, what I feel about him saying it's a gimmick is this, or him wanting to sway public perception. Why does he need to? He's a billionaire. The NFL is not asking him to change this name. If he wanted to, he could just sit up there and say, you know what? They're not asking me to change the name. The NFL is not mandating me to change the name. I'm not changing it, and I'm going to go on about living my life. But he said, you know what? I understand there's an issue here. I understand there are people in Native American reservations and Native American tribes who are struggling. Let me go out and help them and be a part of that community.
All right. Stephen A.
Excuse me. Well, one of the first things I want to say, I want to direct my initial comments to you. And I want to applaud you not just for the great job you're doing. I'm proud of you, bro, but I'm also applauding you because you are now a member of the Washington Redskins. So I understand. I'm not questioning your opinion, the validity of what you're saying. I'm just saying it takes a lot of courage to take any position, because the reality of the situation is you shouldn't have to. Because in the end, the bottom line is, as a player employed by Daniel Snyder, that puts you in a precarious position. So I appreciate your comments on any level. I'm speaking for all of us here when I say that. Now, having said all of that, let me be very clear about my feelings about Daniel Snyder. Don't know the man, met the man on a couple occasions, definitely respect him as a businessman, needs to enjoy some more success with the Redskins. Hopefully you will facilitate that in the very, very near future, because that's what people are looking for him to do. My discomfort with Daniel Snyder and his comments when he talks about living in reality, well, first of all, reality for a billionaire is far, far different than a reality for a lot of people in this country and in this world. So when you say something like that, you're giving indications that whoever you assigned to do research on the matter told you all that you need to know, and now you are educated more so than the actual people who happen to be Native Americans who find this offensive. And that's a very, very dangerous position to take. Now, Skip and I are of the mindset that if people are offended, that is all that should matter. I respect the fact that a billionaire owner for the Redskins, this name is marketable as it is, looking at it from a business perspective, not perceiving it to be as advantageous as he would like, would be a bit resistant towards that. That's one issue. But the dismissive tendencies that Daniel Snyder periodically elocutes is what disturbs me. People need to live in reality. They need to do their research like we did. You know, it's not an issue. Well, white folks, black folks never said it was an issue. It's Native Americans who are saying it's an issue. So for you to be so dogmatic, so strident in your approach, to be so dismissive towards people who are considered to be the offended party, is what alarms me, because it speaks to a level of insensitivity and a level of dismissiveness that he does not need to be articulating on a regular basis. Whether I agree with his position or not, my issue with Daniel Snyder is that you go ahead and talk to Comcast if you want to. Go ahead and talk to your friends locally. Go ahead and do that. But you know something? You've been hiding from the eye of the storm. We haven't seen you in a public setting with other Native Americans spewing that stuff. If you're so confident that you are so right and, more importantly, righteous, which is how his comments come across, then why don't you stand in the eye of the storm and take that position? Anybody can hide and take a position. Anybody can show up when nobody's expecting them to, spew a few words, and then go back and hide in your little billionaire cocoon. But when you are right and, more importantly, righteous, the crowd doesn't matter to you. The environment, the vibe, the ambiance doesn't matter to you. You can stand front and center because right and righteousness is on your side. He doesn't do it because somehow, some way you can't believe that you're righteous when you are not a Native American. And there are Native Americans out there that are telling you from the dictionary perspective, this is a racial slur. You are being insensitive. And when you have this individual, this Oneida spokesperson, Ray Halbritter, the quote here, the last sentence, he says, the more damage he will keep doing to Native American communities, and the more he will become synonymous with the infamous segregationist George Preston Marshall, who originally gave the team this offensive name. The name Redskins, as you pointed out, in 1933, was given to them by a segregationist. And when you stand up and say you're proud of that, there's something wrong with that picture. And I don't know what, but it's something wrong with it.
Yeah, you know what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
you do.
you
do.
I believe I know, but
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to put Ryan Clark on any more of a hot seat, because this is a tricky issue for you at this moment. But once again, as much respect as I have for your new owner, who's done a lot of great things in his career, both in and out of football, I get offended when he tries to change the subject from a racial slur of a nickname to, wait a second, we should all focus on the real life issues. And I'm not sure exactly what he means by this, but I am interpreting this. I am interpreting this to mean the real life issues are all the money I am now that I'm donating to the plight of today's Native Americans. All of their hardships, all their sufferings, I'm trying to help remedy that. Let's focus on that. That's what he's trying to tell us. And to me, he's spinning it like you'd spin a football after you intercept it and spin it in the grass. You know, like that's what you're doing here. Because, again, I'm a white guy. Now, I did grow up in what used to be called Indian Territory, home of the 5 civilized tribes in Oklahoma. So maybe I have a little deeper sensitivity to it. But, hey, that is a racial slur of a nickname by its literal meaning. I'm getting to the point where I can't even say the nickname anymore, and I've said it 1,000,000 times in my life because I used to work in Dallas covering the Cowboys-Redskins rivalry. I can't, who knows how many thousands and thousands of times I've said that nickname mindlessly, numbly, because we grandfathered it in. Because it's always been the Redskins, I'm going to say it one last time, and that's just how we identify the team. So Dan Snyder is fighting for legacy, he's fighting for history, he's fighting for tradition. I get all that. But you can't change the subject and try to buy it off by saying, look at all I'm doing for the plight of today's Native Americans. No, No, that's an apple to an orange. It doesn't really matter because the name is literally the name. And if I took the same name and put it on your minority group, I think you wouldn't like it. I could be wrong, but would you like it if we changed it to that? No. Right? I mean, you'd be outraged. So are a bunch of these people, right?
Well, the thing about it is, and Ryan and Kerry, I think y'all both agree with me on this. To be black, it's virtually impossible to sit back and to look at any other relatively disenfranchised group or beyond relatively. Right. It's just simply dismiss their concerns.
Yeah.
That's because fair. To do that to somebody else, you're inviting or okaying the fact that it was done to us once upon a time. And that's where you have to be careful, because it's like, you know, there are black players, there are black officials. You know, Tony Wiley, one of the best communications directors in the business. You know him. Right. I mean, he's with the Washington Redskins. That's our brother. And considered one of the very best at what he does. These are people that have to speak and represent Daniel Snyder to some degree indirectly. That's what you have to do as well. I'm not talking about your opinion. I'm just talking about as a member of the Redskins. So, you know, that's what I mean when I get on Daniel Snyder. It's like, man, it ain't just about you. Because you got Ryan and you got Tony and you got I don't care if it's a Ragbo, it's RG3, it's Alfred Morris, it's you know, Pierre Garçon. The list goes on and on. You got brothers playing for you, okay, who come, I mean, obviously we're members of a disenfranchised community. You can't be that dismissive to somebody and then ask these dudes to go out there and represent you with fervor and enthusiasm, whatever, when you come across so insensitive. Again, whatever his position is, Skip, because of the billionaire that he is, the businessman that he's at, I totally respect it. And I'm not taking the position one way or the other. I understand you did your research. I don't know. I'm not Native American, but you have Native Americans who are speaking against you. Sure. And to come across publicly as just so dismissive, as if they're just peons and they mean absolutely nothing, speaks to the insensitivity they are speaking about, because you don't seem to care enough. And that's what bothers me.
The bad part about it, to me, is the overall view of it. You know, like we're speaking about the NFL not stepping in and not really saying anything. We're speaking of other people. If it was black, like you said earlier, if it was something that was derogatory towards black people, there would be more white people standing up. Sure. And saying, no, we don't use the word. Like we talked about the N-word. It was a big deal. There were many white people. I don't use the word. I think it's disgusting. There's no way, you know, this should be a part of the language. Let's get it out. There are white people that stepped up and said that. Because of the civil rights movement, because of so many things and how public our struggles were and our fights were, we have other backing. Right now, it's just the Native Americans. That's true. They're by themselves. And even in the article, he states that, listen, maybe no one's paying attention because we don't make up a large part of the buy group of the consumer. Okay, last quick thought. Can you step out of being a new Redskin for this moment and just be Ryan Clark? In your heart of hearts, what is your level of personal comfort or discomfort with that nickname? I would say this. While tweeting now, I like to use the skins and try not to, or try to be to in some way connect to try to understand what they're going through. I can be honest, I don't understand the history of the word. And like I said earlier, I don't know how it is accepted or how it was used to demean him. Like you said, in the name, it's just demeaning in the words used. And so for me, I try to be sensitive to that, you know, but I don't run teams. I don't run the NFL.
Well, let me say this last point, though. During the civil rights movement, this notion that black people marched and did what they did and that was all is a misnomer. There were plenty of white folks that stood up on behalf of African Americans in support of our cause. And that may very well be required here when it comes to the issue involving Native Americans and Daniel Snyder. But we must add, that's also sad, because in the year 2014, it shouldn't take what it took in the 50s and the 60s to promote change. That much is unfortunate.
Coming this summer, the 2014 FIFA World Cup from Brazil. Every goal. The shot, Donovan scores! The USA leads by 2! Every save. Here's Germany up. Steal. Closer. In the box. The shot is stopped. Every match. Wherever wherever you are this summer, take the FIFA World Cup with you. It's on ESPN Radio and the ESPN Radio app.
Welcome back to First Take, everyone. Joining us now is NBA analyst Tim Legler. Or Legs is just because you're part of the family.
Just Legs. It works better.
We haven't seen you in a while. Help us out. Earlier we were talking about what Paul Pierce said. He called his team soft because they gave up 19 boards, offensive boards, and he was saying they're just not playing.
52 to 30.
Yeah, and he said it's just not the way they play. So then we got into a discussion, Miami Heat. How many times have they been out-rebounded, 20 or more, and still win the game? 2-1 is their record. What does that say to you?
Well, I think, first of all, when you look at rebounding from a sheer numbers standpoint, it's completely irrelevant just on the number of rebounds. It can be taken out of context. You have to look into it deeper. The bigger number that you have to look at is rebound percentage, the number of shots that come off the rim that your team gets. That's the biggest number you need to look at. And how many of those rebounds are actually being converted into points.
Okay.
So to just look at it and say we're out-rebounded by 20, if you handed me a stat sheet and that's the one number I looked at without looking at anything else, I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you who won that game. And a lot of people will look at that raw number. It's not as important as is that team that gets offensive rebounds, converting those into offense.
Let me interject, because I'm going to come right back to you. The only reason I disagree with you on that point is from this perspective. A star like Paul Pierce, a champion like Paul Pierce, doesn't make that statement taking what you said into account. It's accurate what you're saying. I'm not challenging its veracity. I'm simply saying you playing in the league, you know that if those words come out of a mouth like Paul Pierce, and one of the reasons is the rebounding, you know he's alluding to what you're alluding to. Yeah. In other words, in terms of the rebounding percentage and what translates into shots. Right. He's not looking at the 52 to 30. That's what a reporter might throw on his face in the immediate aftermath of the game. But you playing understand contextually exactly what he's alluding to. The fact that you got guys getting position, moving guys off the block, dominating the paint area like that. You know that's what he's talking about.
What he is doing right now is sending a subtle message and a motivational message to Kevin Garnett, Andre Blatch, Plumlee, their front line. Yeah. That's what he's doing. And you know what? That's a veteran guy making a statement without calling anybody out, without alluding to something specifically, basically saying we need to be a little bit tougher, a little bit more physical, because he's not thinking about the Toronto Raptors.
That's what I said, but Skip disagreed with it. He disagreed that it was a good thing to do. I thought it was a good thing to do exactly for what you said. Skip disagreed with that.
But you have to be careful because of the context. He had 2 shots to win the basketball game in the last 24 seconds. So we look at the 2-time defending champ Miami Heat. Once again this year, they finished dead last in rebounds, just total rebounds. Dead last. That's a fascinating phenomenon to me. And 2-1 when they got out rebounded by 20 plus. Did you think LeBron stood up after those games and said, we played soft tonight? No, he didn't care because they can overcome it in many other ways. Well, maybe the Nets came real close to overcoming 52 to 30 and 19 offensive rebounds that they surrendered, right? So they were there. They didn't lose by 25. They barely lost, right?
I agree with you. And I think the one area I will really agree with you is this. It's unusual to see someone start going there 2 games into a series in which you've already won one of the games on the road. So it's 1-1, you're going back home. You're in pretty good shape. You don't usually see words like soft thrown around this early in the season. And here's what I think. I think Paul Pierce is making that statement more because he's not even talking about the Toronto series. He's looking at the bigger picture overall. Because they believe that they're going to beat the Miami Heat, beat whoever comes out of the Indiana-Washington series probably, and win an NBA title. He believes that, so he's thinking bigger picture, like this isn't going to be good enough against those teams, more so than he is trying to fire guys up for this series, and that's what he's really trying to do.
Stephen A., last word?
No, I totally disagree with Tim and Skip on this, because I think that you're looking at those big boys, and again, it's not just from a motivational perspective. Yes, you're right. He is looking at the big picture too, but he's saying, wait a minute, this is what y'all problem was last year. Y'all was soft last year, too. Y'all were considered soft. This is why y'all got beat. This is why Chicago beat you. Don't let this happen again. It's not going to be the same scenario is what I'm trying to say.
They don't have Brook Lopez anymore, so it's a whole new world.
I understand that, but it's not necessarily a whole new world. Yes, you miss Brook Lopez, but he's been out the whole season. If you just lost him, that would be different. But you've been playing without him. He's like, wait a minute, we're here
Because it is.
I think it would carry more weight if that came from Kevin Garnett.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Because he's the defensive, emotional leader
Totally
of that
agree.
team.
Totally agree with that.
And what have we always heard? No rebounds, no rings.
Totally agree.
No
Except
rebounds,
for the
no
Miami
rings.
Heat.
So it doesn't work anymore. All right, let's move on to the topic at hand. Why we brought you here, okay?
right.
Yeah.
Rockets take on the Trailblazers tonight in Game 2. Dwight had an impressive Game 1, still didn't win. So we're putting you guys on the hook because Dwight says this, give me the ball. I need the ball. Does Dwight need the ball? Will that make a difference?
You got 21 field goal attempts. I mean, you go 9 for 21 and you get primarily single coverage. And look, don't get me wrong, Robin Lopez is a very good low post defender, okay? But when you get single coverage the majority of the game and you take 21 field goal attempts, I don't know how many more times he thinks the ball's coming in there. That's not the way that team has played all year. They're a perimeter-based team, and they're at their best when they have some balance of throwing it in there. But if you're talking about coming down and force feeding the post, and this is how we're going to establish this game, we're going to go into Dwight Howard, I think that's a mistake because I think this team is really hard to defend when they get the ball hopping on the perimeter. And you are forcing teams to try to match up, scramble, and chase you out to the three-point line. And now they can attack you when you're closing out because Parsons can do it, Beverly can do it, Harden can do it, and Dwight gets his touches. But if that's your game plan going in, this is what we're going to establish tonight, I think it's a mistake to go into a game thinking that way. He had a good game, good numbers.
He did.
But I don't think Dwight Howard operating down there is going to have a high enough conversion rate in a one-on-one situation when you have other guys on the perimeter. That, to me, what your offense is built around.
Tim, I remember talking with Dwight earlier this, last summer when he left L.A., signed with Houston. I did the interview after that. Then we talked earlier on in the season. And one of the things that he was sick over was the fact that he was injured last year with the back, played anyway, and somebody else got that Defensive Player of the Year award. He's the kind of dude that believes he should be a 5-time Defensive Player of the Year and counting. That's how he thinks because he's got 3 of them already. You know what? He needs to be that tonight. You want to make a difference. Dwight Howard has to absolutely, positively dominate on the defensive side of the floor. And I don't take credit away from anybody, and I'm certainly not going to take credit away from my man, my partner that I've known for years. I heard you on Mike and Mike this morning. You were absolutely, positively on the money, bro, when you pointed this out. How dare Kevin McHale defend LaMarcus Aldridge with single coverage? I mean, who do you think? Do you not know who this dude is?
With 6'8" guys.
I mean, with 6'8" guys. You got a Terrence Ross in him. You pointed out how one time James Harden was on him. Okay, you had Terrence Ross in him, James Harden. Who the hell else? It don't matter. He's LaMarcus Aldridge. This dude is big time. Okay, Skip, he can take you inside or out. He's lengthy. He's got long arms. He's got a nice perimeter touch. He can post you up. He can take you inside. 46 and 18. And here's the criminal part about this, all right? Because I like McHale. I'm a fan of Kevin McHale's, and I think he knows how to coach, and I think he knows the game of basketball.
I agree with you.
He didn't show up in game 1. There's a bevy of errors there. And I got to tell you something. What's criminal about what Kevin McHale did? Kevin McHale, to me, if it were not for Tim Duncan, forget Karl Malone. No disrespect, because I love the mailman, but Kevin McHale will be the best power forward, 10 feet and in that I've ever seen. How do you not know? You, Kevin McHale, a champion at power forward. Do you not know what LaMarcus Aldridge brings to the table? How dare that man? That is just insulting. That's why LaMarcus Aldridge was salivating. He's like, he was like, who do you not know who I am? I mean, that's really what this comes down to. You can't have 46 and 18, Skip.
The Rockets have been doing this all year.
Can't do it.
Play.
Not against him, Skip.
They're arrogant in the way they approach a game. They lead the league in three-point attempts. They think they're just going to out-offense you. That's how they approach basketball.
Skip,
okay.
Hey, J.C. Kidd, that's why he's that's why he's stepping.
I understand.
Because he makes adjustments.
Okay, I get it. Back to Dwight Howard. You always throw stats at me off the final box score, and you say, well, wait a second. Dwight had whatever it's that night, 25 and 15. And I always wonder.
With 5 blocks.
Always. Yet, I always look at the hidden stats, the ones that don't show up in the box score. And all I know is that the other night, Dwight Howard, with 32 seconds left in regulation, came down with an offensive rebound and had a bunny put back. He could have come down flat-footed and gathered himself and gone right back up and just slammed it and probably got an and one. Instead, he tried to just lay it back in, and he left it short. It was a killer play in that game. Then we go to 5 seconds left back on the defensive end. Dwight Howard stood flat-footed while Damian Lillard and then LaMarcus both got offensive rebounds over him while he's doing this in the lane. And LaMarcus lays it back in to tie the game and send it to overtime. It's not acceptable. And Shaquille O'Neal, at halftime on TNT, he took apart Dwight, and he kept saying, it's Robin Lopez. As much respect as you said you have for Robin Lopez, it's still Robin Lopez. Well, if truly, as you told me, Dwight's the best big man in the game, well then offensively, if you did throw the ball into him more, he would destroy Robin Lopez. Shaquille O'Neal would have destroyed Robin Lopez. Is that fair?
Well, Shaquille O'Neal, in fairness, listen, Shaquille O'Neal ain't wrong. And when it comes to big men, you know, what he needs to be is assertive about everybody the way he is with Dwight Howard, because the man knows what he's talking about. But Shaquille O'Neal did have 3 to 4 inches and about 60 pounds on Dwight Howard. So let's just keep that in mind.
Dwight's got some shoulders on him, though.
The difference between like a Dwight and a Shaq is Shaq established such deep post position and it was such an immovable object that when he caught it, it was a very simple process of turning overwhelming you, putting my big meaty shoulder in your sternum and driving you under the rim and finishing the play. Dwight Howard doesn't run the way he used to. He used to be able to run the floor like a sprinter, establish deep post position right in the middle of the lane when he was in Orlando and when he was healthy, before all these back issues started surfacing. He doesn't do that anymore. Now, more often than not, he's the last guy up the floor. He goes to the low post. He doesn't fight for the deep post position like Shaq would.
Better from last year, though.
Better. Right. But he still is forced, because he's catching the ball off the lane, to do a little bit more than he's comfortable doing against a pretty good post defender, and you're going to end up with more empty trips than you can afford to have, because Portland is one of the best offensive teams in the league. And in my opinion, mix it up, give him his touches, but don't make that the central part of your game plan. They've been special because of what they do on the perimeter in spacing you out and moving the basketball.
Remember what I said here. You need to put Asik in the lineup with Dwight Howard against Portland. They're too big. LaMarcus is too long. Lopez is big enough. You're going to have to put Dwight in with Asik and make sure they do what they have to do in the low post. You cannot have LaMarcus Aldridge on single coverage.
LaMarcus Aldridge is so good that if they elect to continue to play him this way, he will get 30 to 40 in every single game.
That's right.
Because he's just not going to have an inefficient night.
There were times in the first game. And they're not losing this series if that changes.
He was dribbling the ball, looking around like, are you serious? Nobody's coming.
That's right.
Blazers at Rockets, 9:30 Eastern tonight. Legs, appreciate you. Welcome back to First Take, everyone. Here to preview UFC 172. That's preview. UFC President Dana White, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Are you having fun already?
I am.
Because you seem excited.
I am excited.
All right, so we need you to talk about 172. He is. We just had a whole chat in the commercial break. Him and Stephen A are bonding.
They bonded a long time ago.
It's true.
Long time ago.
So let's talk about John Bone Jones and Glover Teixeira. Teixeira said this, and we'll show you this quote. There was no way I was going to be the betting favorite in my own head, and that's of my trainers. I am the favorite, but it's no surprise that I'm not in the eyes of the fans. You said, what is he? We were talking about in terms of the underdog?
He's a 5-to-1 underdog, which is crazy. And I think the reason is because a lot of people don't really know about him. And the fights that he's had in the UFC, he's won by knockout, but he got caught early and was in a little bit of trouble. John Jones knows what a serious threat Glover Teixeira is, and I know he's in great shape and ready for this fight. This guy can knock you out with either hand, and he's on an incredible win streak.
You've had a lot of great champions in this sport. Where does John Jones rank among them?
The incredible thing about John Jones, not only just being the youngest champion ever, is the guys he had to go through, not only to get the title, but to retain the title. He beat all the best guys in the world. The 205-pound light heavyweight division has always been the toughest division in the UFC, and he has dominated that division now. You know, he keeps this up, and he's a young guy. You're talking about a 26-year-old guy, and this will be his 7th title defense. You know, it's pretty amazing. He's not even in his prime yet. You know, in fighting, you're in your prime, 28, 29 years old. So If he keeps his head together, and it looks like he's gonna, we went through a little rocky period with him. He keeps his head together. This guy can go down as the greatest ever.
Bigger picture, I saw a Sports Business Journal annual survey about a year ago that said that your sport had moved slightly ahead of boxing among males in this country in popularity. Do you see that gap continuing to widen?
Yeah, when we do fights, we just did a fight on Saturday on free television, and when we do fights, we're #1 on all of television, all the key male demos. We nail that 18 to 34, 18 to 49. And now with women like Ronda Rousey, she's become a huge superstar. Now we're starting to bring the women in. One thing that I notice is when we go to Brazil, Brazilians like to see Brazilians do well. The Brits like to see the Brits do well. And women like to see women do well.
One of the things that I marvel at is the fact that, what I love about you guys, and that's why you and I have cultivated a relationship years ago, you give people the fights they want to see when they want to see them, which I'm sure you can appreciate. There would be no such thing of waiting for Mayweather and Pacquiao in your sport.
Until they're 40 years old.
We do the best that we can do. We try to give the fans the fight so we can do. The Mayweather Pacquiao thing is the craziest thing, and it's just another reason why boxing is just getting murdered. I just heard that Pacquiao is going to fight. What's his name?
He's just for Bradley. I don't know
who's next.
No, he's fighting the guy who just knocked him out that they fought already.
Marquez?
Yeah, Marquez.
He's going to fight him again?
He's going to fight Marquez again.
Is that news?
Yeah,
It might be news. We haven't heard it.
Listen. Take the $20 million from Floyd, right? Take
40.
It's 40. All right, take the $40 million, get a rematch clause, go in there, try to win that fight, and then the rematch will be huge. You'll both make $80 million, $100 million.
But I guess what I'm asking is, how is it that you're able to give people the fights that they want to see, but in another pugilistic sport, the promoters are allowed to dominate to the point where we got to wait years to see it. So how have you pulled that off?
So here's what we did. We went out, and when we purchased the UFC, one of the big problems was that the fights couldn't be made. So what we did is we have everybody. Now Arum has this guy. Golden Boy has this guy. King has this guy. Everybody is under one roof, and the best always fight the best, and the fans get to see the fights that the fans want to see. Everybody is under our promotion.
Okay, so if Mayweather and Pacquiao ever do fight, and it would be a mega fight, because I still think it would be a big sell, right?
Yes. I think it still would be.
Would it be the last hurrah for boxing?
The question is, it's been the last hurrah for boxing for the last 10 years. When De La Hoya is gone, when this guy's gone.
You're right.
I think that, boxing has become very much like horse racing. Every year, it's declining, but when there's a big fight, the people show up and they watch it. You realize, I was just having this conversation with Kevin Iole, and Kevin Iole was telling me that the numbers are still trickling in. Floyd's fight with Canelo looks like it's going to do over 2.5 million pay-per-view buys.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. And the fight with De La Hoya.
Oh, you mean Floyd? You mean back past?
Canelo. Canelo and Floyd. When Canelo and Floyd fought in that big fight, it's, the way the pay-per-view business works, it keeps trickling in, and it's going to do over 2.5 million buys. Yeah. Floyd and Oscar did 2.5 million buys, too. I mean, that is a massive, massive number.
How do you get more fans from boxing to MMA?
Well, what's happening is, when we were growing up, your parents would put you in karate or taekwondo or something like that. The new martial art the kids are taking all over the world is mixed martial arts. So as this younger generation continues to grow and get older, our fan base is growing bigger and bigger every day. And not just here. A lot of people don't realize the UFC is in 175 countries, territories, in 23 different languages, and over 1 billion homes worldwide on some form of television.
But every sport has a big, big draw that's like a magnet for their sport.
Right.
Give me your top two right now.
Well, Ronda Rousey is definitely one of them. John Jones, Cain Velasquez. The big draws in our business are always the champions. But there's always these kids that come up. There's a kid out of Ireland right now. His name is Conor McGregor. And he is a huge buzz all over the world. So you know how it works. And the way that the UFC works is that when we go into these countries, there's a guy right now, his name is Alexander Gustafsson, who is huge throughout Europe. The guy who...
Yeah, gave Jones a run for his money. Yes, sir.
Exactly. So, the difference between this and boxing has become, Think about how big boxing was in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s. And, that has declined. It became a very European sport. It's not as big as there were. There used to be so many big names in boxing and so many big fights. And like you said earlier, there's a couple guys left.
Just a few. UFC 172, John Jones, Glover Teixeira, Saturday night, Baltimore, correct?
Keep pushing.
Yes, ma'am.
Keep pushing, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your time on campus.
Appreciate it.
It's always a great day when we have Mel Kiper, our NFL analyst, joining us. Mel, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming back. Here. All right, so listen, we're going to talk about Johnny football. Recently, there were some quotes. It was from one Shireen Williams. And so I'm going to read these quotes to you, and I want to get your take on them, okay? One of the things she said, some folks in the AFC said this. A scout said this of Johnny Manziel. The Texans are crazy if they don't draft Johnny Manziel. An assistant coach for an AFC team said this. I've been at this a long time. I've never seen anyone like him. He's special. I'm not saying he'll become a Hall of Famer, but I'm telling you right now, he could change the game. Let's embrace all of these.
By the way, Shireen is a long-time, highly respected reporter, and so I would take these quotes to the bank.
Nevertheless,
so have you heard anything?
Have you heard anything similar to this, and then your take on it?
Well, we talked last week. I said 50% of the people loved him, 50% of the people had questions about how he would translate his game to the pro level, and those 50% that really like him said basically that. They echoed those same sentiments. That he could be, and I've said this, Fran Tarkenton, Skip and I were talking about, he reminds me a lot of Tarkenton. So for me, if you're going to take Johnny Manziel, you better hope you're hitting a home run or a grand slam, and you're not going to strike out. So that's why you're bringing him in. If you miss on Manziel, you're setting your program back 3 or 4 years, and the Cleveland Browns can't afford that. They haven't had a quarterback since Bernie Kosar. So, and if Houston wants to maneuver and move down and get to a more palatable region of the first round to take Manziel, maybe they could do that. It seems like the two options are Clowney or trade.
Right.
Not take Manziel at 1, but maybe move to 6, let Atlanta get Clowney, move to 6, and take Manziel. Houston's still in the mix for Manziel, but not at number 1, in my opinion.
Okay, real quick. Just to be specific, in your private conversations with people you've known and trusted a long time, have you heard any quotes quite that strong from anyone, like he could change the game? No. Or Houston would be crazy not to take him? No,
I've not heard that, because people are still, as I said, scared to death to take him because they're not sure, scared to death not to because they think he can come back and beat them. But to hear definitive statements about he's going to be the greatest, he's going to change the game. May not be the greatest, but change the game. The game's already changed.
You already said of all quarterbacks, they're moving down. They're not even a part of your sensational 7.
No. And that sensational 7, doesn't include quarterbacks, but 2 could go in the top 7. He's one of those. Teddy Bridgewater's moved way down. Derek Carr's moved way up. But he is certainly Manziel in that top group. And I think Cleveland or Houston with a trade scenario would make sense for where Manziel would make a team that needs energy, needs a quarterback because of the division, because of Andrew Luck, because of what Cleveland's doing in their division with Roethlisberger, Flacco, and Dalton. They need to make that move.
I got it, Mr. Kiper. Skip Bayless, I'm going to ask Mr. Mel Kiper this question, but I'm going to preface it by saying don't feel disrespected. What I'm about to say about Johnny Manziel. Okay? Just work with me here. Just work with me here. Mel Kiper Jr., my guru, the greatest man, the greatest man with the college football players. I love you. Got to ask you this question just for my own edification. I need help here. There have been plenty of dudes that have been drafted in the first round, high in the first round. They haven't necessarily panned out, or at least haven't reached expectations. There have been Heisman Trophy winners that weren't even drafted. There have been Heisman Trophy winners that, dare I say, wasn't considered that great. We won't mention any names. The point that I'm trying to make, Mel Kiper Jr., is simple. What's the big deal about Johnny Manziel, especially since there's such a question mark? Yes, to Skip Bayless, as if the world think he should go number 1 overall. There's a couple of people that are entertained and intrigued by the possibilities, the potential, but there are surefire dudes like the Clownies of the world. There's a dude like Khalil Mack. You even have some people saying Teddy Bridgewater's getting a bad rap because this boy has proven it, completing over 70% of his passes, couple in 11-2 seasons, he could do some things. Just explain for me, what's the big deal about Johnny Manziel? I know he can play. I think he's going to succeed on the next level. But what's the big deal? Explain, because I can't go by just him. I need to know.
The big deal, Stephen A., is that he is competitive as any player in this draft. Okay. He wins a lot of games.
We've seen that before, too.
He improvises.
We've seen that, too.
He creates something out of nothing.
Okay.
All right. His arm strength is good.
Yes.
So very good. He's made improvements and strides throwing from the pocket. He knows he has to keep going in that direction. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to protect his body. He knows that. He understands. Hopefully he does. Okay? In terms of accuracy, he can put the ball where he needs to. Ball placement, very good with Manziel.
But haven't we found ourselves saying this about somebody in the past? I mean, is he one of a kind? Like, we've never seen anything like him before?
We've never seen Johnny Manziel.
Never.
We've never seen it. Okay, I needed verification.
Remember what he's saying. 50-50 split on Johnny Manziel. The player you refer to, whose name I'm not going to say today, the former Heisman Trophy winner from Florida, was 5% versus 95%.
And you could argue 1 or 2% on that.
Well, maybe 1 or 2%.
Yeah, I needed to know.
And that's
now you know.
And Manziel, and when I talk about Fran Tarkenton, I think we would all agree. And I grew up as a big Fran Tarkenton fan. He beat my L.A. Rams. I was an L.A. Rams fan.
But lost 4 Super Bowls. And I love Fran Tarkenton, but lost 4 Super Bowls.
But he got there.
He got there.
They got there. Okay. Manziel gets a 4. I think everybody would be happy they drafted Johnny Manziel. Whether they win or lose. Bottom line is, when you compare him to Fran Tarkenton, who was a great player in the NFL, that's high praise. And I'll compare him to that. So I'm skeptical. But and I'm not sold completely because I don't know. I frankly said I don't know, and I don't think a lot of people do right now know about how Johnny. I think we all root for him because the league needs great players and needs exciting players like Johnny Manziel.
Well, recently you moved Clowney to 1. We're talking Clowney, but did you hear what Warren Sapp had to say about him?
Yes.
Okay, so let's consider that. Warren Sapp basically says he's been unimpressed with what he's seen on tape. Do you think that he has a point?
I've watched the tape, Harry, and I went back and broke it all down and watched play after play. I don't see the lack of hustle. I don't see the lack of competitiveness or determination or playing 4 quarters. I mean, does he pick and choose at times? Yeah. The ball's going the other side of the field? Yeah. He'll lay low, and he'll save himself. Sure. But they all do. Clowney's a unique talent. He's a once-in-every-20-year player. There's somebody is saying that, hey, if you don't take Clowney, you're crazy. Yeah. I mean, you got to take Jadeveon Clowney, especially in a division with Andrew Luck. So, yeah, every player's going to have – Andrew Luck had critics.
Of course.
John Elway back in the day probably had a critic. I thought he was the greatest player of all time with Johnny Unitas. He probably had a critic or two.
How serious? Because I spoke to Warren Sapp yesterday, like I told Skip, and he didn't question Clowney's skill. He just talked about waking up in the morning and wanting to play football and looking forward to it and having that more playing with like you're here on fire. He sees that in a Khalil Mack, even though he's not saying he would take him with the #1 overall pick. What does it mean to you that a Warren Sapp, somebody that plays that position, is saying that kind of thing about Clowney?
Where Warren's coming from, and I spent the day yesterday with Ray Lewis. Okay. And Ray Lewis is all about football, all about making everybody get to his level in terms of preparation. If you don't, we got a problem with you. Right. All those Miami Hurricane players, Michael Irvin, they all think the same way. So when they hear a guy say, I'm not going to work out for you, and the beginning of the year saying that he is better off, and that wasn't coming from Clowney. It was coming, he's better off not playing. You guys probably debated it. He's better off not playing. Well, he hears all this. He got cheap-shotted in the North Carolina game. So, and he didn't play in another game. So I think what they're saying is show up every week. Okay. And this was a unique set of circumstances for Clowney. What kid would have been the #3 pick after his freshman year, #1 pick after his sophomore year, and everybody's telling him, you're better off not playing. Okay. And then he gets cheap-shotted. And he knows the only thing to prevent him from being #1 is getting hurt. This was unique for Clowney. No other player's going to have to deal with 3 guys blocking him every play. And, I agree. You would have loved to see him out there. Spurrier didn't give him a ringing endorsement. No. But, hey, bottom line is he's the best player by far in this draft. Khalil Mack. Love Khalil Mack. Okay. Could not put him ahead of, in terms of a rating, ahead of Clowney, because Khalil Mack's not a finished product. He's still raw. You can't put him ahead of Jadeveon Clowney.
I know that Ray Lewis is working on the draft with you, on the draft show. So did he have any comments at all on Clowney?
Loves Clowney's talent. Didn't have anything really negative to say. But with Ray, it's all about once you get to the pro level, you better do what you're capable of doing. You better work, and you better be prepared, and you better put all the time in away. So, like Ray says, if a player's not, you got to have a leader in that locker room saying you will. Hopefully, Jadeveon Clowney will be a leader and set the tone. Normally, it's your linebacker or your quarterback, but the league's changing now. So at the end of the day, Jadeveon Clowney is a once-in-every-20-year player. You better find somebody awfully good at #1 to take him ahead of Clowney.
I'm calling out you and Ray Lewis right now. That's right, the great Ray Lewis. I have a suggestion, Skip. I think it would be a great television show. You got Gruden in his quarterback camp. How do you like a camp with Mel Kiper Jr. and Ray Lewis? I kind of like that.
I'll tell you what.
With Clowney, you mean?
Yes!
Yeah, I will say this. When you're with Ray and you're with any great player, there's not a player in that locker room that's going to let up. And that's what every team needs. So when you talk about Ray came in, he said a 220 to 225, and that was barely.
Right.
He got to 240, then to 260, but he went 26.
Oh.
Everybody talks about all these players, and Brian Billick said it very accurately. We all do revisionist history with draft choices. Everybody loved the ones that are great, but they don't remember what they said when they were coming out. And if they're not good, we didn't like him.
Ray had muscles on his fingers. Coming out of the draft. I interviewed him when he was in Miami.
So you'd have taken him in the top 5?
I don't know about
You
that.
would not have taken him in the top 5.
He went 26. So I'm saying is Russell Wilson. Everybody knew Russell Wilson was great. Third round pick. No, I don't even think Seattle was aware of how good he would be. Or they wouldn't have taken him in the 3rd round. They would have taken him in the 2nd over Wagner, who was a heck of a linebacker, but you take the quarterback over a linebacker if you think he's going to be a Super Bowl winner.
Here's the problem. When I talk to ex-players who played with the high motor, any ex-Hurricane type, we've had Derek Brooks on the show, they look at what Clowney did last year. Stats fell. Not that he shut it down completely, but they say we are incapable of turning our motor off. If you put us on a football field, we're going to go 1,000% because we couldn't help ourselves, even if we were risking career-threatening injury, right? So the point is, you were the first person who stepped up and said, no, wait a second. I broke down the tape with a GM I trust, and we saw pretty good effort.
Yeah.
Okay, you're the lone voice in the wilderness on that one.
Well,
so
I think Derek Brooks was a late 1st-round pick.
He was.
Jay Van Zandt has been number 1. Derek Brooks wasn't the number 1 player in the draft for a period of years. Warren Sapp wasn't the number 1 player in the draft for a period of years. Ray Lewis wasn't. This guy has been. You take all those guys and say, I would have done this, and you put them in that set of circumstances when they were already, after their freshman year, defined number 3 behind Luck and RG3, defined number 1 after their sophomore year, then have to play or forced to play their 3rd year, hear all this talk going on, all this chatter going on, and they wouldn't have fallen into that trap. And you go back, and there were games, where you would have liked to see him show up and do some things when he was hurt, but he didn't, and he was protecting himself fine. But when he played hard. And it's a unique talent. So everybody else wants to say this, this, and this, but if you were in that situation, I don't know if anybody might have handled it any differently, because injury was the only thing that could have prevented Clowney from being the number 1 pick overall.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's our final takes, NBA edition, Mavs Spurs. Who wins tonight, Stephen A?
I'm going to go with the Spurs. I think the Mavs have an opportunity to make this a 6-game series, no doubt about it, but I'm going to assume they'd win 2 in Dallas before winning game 2 in San Antonio. I think San Antonio will be ready tonight. I think that whatever caught them by surprise in game 1, I don't think will happen in game 2. I expect Dirk Nowitzki to have a better game, but I still expect the San Antonio Spurs to find a way to win this one.
I hope you're right. I said that the Mavericks would win 1 game in San Antonio, and I will go with tonight's game. I'll say Dallas wins a close, low-scoring game, sort of right around the 90 mark, because Dirk will make a couple shots down the stretch, and they played superb, shocking 3-point defense on the Spurs, the best 3-point shooting team, because the Spurs went 3 for 17 in game 1 because they stuck with the snipers, and I think they might do it again tonight.
Bobcats return to Miami. Who wins that game?
Well, we know that Miami's going to win this game. You look at the Charlotte Bobcats, they have struggled scoring. They're a team to be respected. Obviously, Coach Clifford has done a phenomenal job with this team, turning them around. 22-game improvement. Al Jefferson is a stud, no doubt about it. I love Kemba Walker as well. But that plantar fasciitis that Al Jefferson is suffering from, the combination of that being in Miami for game 2, Miami's going to close this deal. They'll win this series in 5 games, in my estimation. If Charlotte is going to win a game in this series, I believe it will be game 3 on their home court. It won't be game 2.
I'm with you unless Al Jefferson has some miraculous recovery and he's not limping tonight. If he's not limping, I give him a shot, but I think he will still be limping.
Trailblazers, Rockets. Who do you got?
I'm going to say the Rockets, because I think if the Rockets lose this game, they lose the series. They have no shot at even pushing it to 7 games. I think if the Trailblazers win tonight, it's pretty much over in probably 6 games. So I'm looking at the Trailblazers to have a good game, but I'm looking at the Dwight Howard to play big tonight and James Harden to make amends for his game 1 late game performance. I think they win game 2 tonight.
He had better. This is desperate time for the home team. I'm with you. They cannot lose this game. James Harden cannot allow them to lose this game. It comes down to him, and I think he will come through.
And Patrick Beverly, he has to play.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.
What makes the Indy 500 the greatest spectacle in racing?
Back home again in India.
We are playing. Indianapolis 500, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on ABC.